Good evening. I wanted to share a story with you guys. I'm sure most of you had probably seen it because it's become national news all across the U.S. I know Fox News has carried the story and a few other people have as well. But a man in northern Ontario, Canada, and we'll talk why that's important in a little while here, for 3 nights in a row had his trash gone through. And he would come out in the morning and he would see trash cans tipped over, trash bags shredded apart, everything on the ground and all the garbage and all the regular stuff that we throw out. And he would come to find his dog, which is a Mastiff mix, big dog, that it was chewing on a bone. Well, this might not seem unusual, except that the bone that he was chewing on was not one that he gave him. He found that his dog was chewing on a deer bone in the backyard. And he's like, I never gave my dog a deer bone. So this man quickly deduced for himself that something was digging through the trash. And something or someone is giving his dog a bone as a distraction or a way to keep him quiet or to placate the dog while they dig through his trash. So the gentleman who this was happening to immediately assumes it's a bear. And a bear's a pretty good guess. By the way, I left a link in the description below to the original story if you want to check it out. I guess it kind of blew up on Twitter when the guy posted all this stuff and posted pictures of his dog and all that, and then it kind of became national news. But he quickly deduced that a bear was digging through his trash. And this is very common behavior for bears. And found it very interesting that 3 nights in a row, which is pretty habitual, bears tend to come back to the same spot. But where I have a really hard time is thinking that a bear would be smart enough to drop a bone for a dog. I've never heard of these kind of stories, much less do it 3 nights in a row, much less have access to enough bones to remember to consciously pick up a bone, bring it over, for a bear to get close enough to a dog, drop the bone, let the dog pick it up, and then tiptoe around the dog and go through trash cans. And I think it's also important to note in this story that this man has actually never seen a bear go through his trash. He has never seen it. He only just has the aftermath and just assumes that it's a bear. So I want you to remember that because I think it's important as we discuss this story a little later on. So if you guys remember, I did a video on it, and there's a link in the description below as well. The story a couple months back in North Carolina of a little boy, about 3 years old, went missing in the woods. His property that he lived on was very rural, and it was on the edge of some woods. And he wanted to go for a hike. Family he was with said no, and he wandered off. And he was missing for, I think, 2 or 3 days. And it was like freezing cold, rain out in the 30s and 40s. And luckily, miraculously, they found the little boy. And he was in pretty good spirits and in pretty good shape. He didn't have a jacket or anything with him. I guess he was just like in a t-shirt and jeans and pants. And being at 3 years old, you have limited life experience and limited vocabulary. And what they were able to get out of him was, the bear kept me warm. The bear kept me warm and took care of me and fed me. And well, that raises a lot of, eyebrows, especially for bear activity as well. So I think it's kind of interesting that you think about, here's a couple stories in the last few months of bears doing things that I can't ever imagine a bear doing. Because you think of a 3-year-old boy, it would probably be dinner for a bear, or it would run the other way because a lot of bears are shy of humans. But much less, cuddle with it and keep it warm or lead it to a place of shelter or bring it food. There was no follow-up to this that I ever saw. If you guys had a follow-up to that story, please let me know in the comments below. But I never heard any more about that story. I'm sure the family wants to be left alone. And there's a lot of people in the paranormal community saying that that was no bear that saved this kid. And I happen to be one of those people. So when we look at the possible suspects for what could be going through the trash, a few things goes through this mind. And I'm not doubting this gentleman. I'm not doubting his frame of mind, his frame of reference, what he thinks exists and what he thinks could happen. But let's look at this a little bit more analytically And you guys can maybe draw your own conclusions. So bears are known to dig through trash. That's kind of the famous thing with bears is you go down to the dump and you watch bears. Black bears and grizzly bears have been known to do this. In Ontario, Canada, unless I'm severely mistaken, they only have black bears up there. And black bears are the most common species. They're spread all over the United States, spread all over Canada, where grizzly bears or brown bears are in a few patches in the United States around Yellowstone area and Glacier and going on up into Alaska. Bear behavior, they're very clever animals. They can get into a lot of things. They can get into a lot of trouble. And I've read a few books on bears. I've had encounters with grizzlies and black bears close up and at distances. Spent a lot of time in bear country in Alaska, in the Yellowstone area, in Glacier National Park. Read several books. Here's a picture of my copy of Bear Attacks, Their Causes and Avoidances by Stephen Herrero. And he goes into great depth about the difference between black bears and grizzly bears. But we'll focus on black bears. You know, especially a fed bear is a dead bear. When they come around, they go through trash and they could be a big problem for people. And it is very much bear, you know, knock over a trash can. They are not gentle. They don't go through it kindly. They knock over trash cans. They spread stuff all around. They eat wrappers, and they love diapers, by the way. You know, and I've been within a couple of feet before of black bears. And it's very common. They look for food. They look for trash, whatever they can get. And it's very, very sad for the bear because often these bears have to be put down. They can't relocate a lot of bears because they'll take a bear, tranquilize it, and drop it 400 miles away. And then a few months later, it walked all the way back to where it knows. So that's kind of suspect number one is a bear. So the thing is, though, that strikes me so odd is the bears and dogs thing. Because Stephen Herrero says right in his book, and there's been many encounters where people have been attacked and chased by bears where their dogs were with them. Because what will happen is a dog, you know how they run up and down the trail? They'll run up off the trail and find a bear, bark at it, and run back towards their master, and the bear will be in tow. Bears generally avoid dogs. Dogs tend to bark their head offs at bears. So even if this guy never saw the bear, even if the bear had a bone for the dog would probably start barking before that bear even got close enough because it's not like a bear can toss it a bone or be very strategic about it. I mean, they're bears. So I have a hard time kind of believing that the dog would let the bear get that close, would be friendly enough with it to give it a bone and to do it all silently. Just from my encounters I've had with dogs and with bears and the combination of the two, dogs tend to just bark their head off incessantly when a bear comes around, and bears tend to avoid dogs if they can. So one of the other suspects in my book, as far as notorious trash pickers, would have to be the raccoon. For me, nature's felons, I've experienced this. I've had people experience this. They're all over the United States and Canada. They do quite well in the snow and all sorts of habitats. They're pretty much everywhere, and they're in big cities too. They can work as a team to tip trash cans over. They have sharp claws. They're quite wily and smart, and they're very much known to go through trash. As far as their relationship with dogs, once again, I don't think a raccoon is going to bring a bone over to a dog, especially 3 days in a row, to get to the trash. Dogs usually chase raccoons. Most dogs have a particular prey instinct. Raccoons will steal dog food, but they generally avoid the dog themselves. They'll go the other way. And like I said, the dog would start barking immediately before a raccoon would ever be close enough to drop it a bone. So I honestly don't think it's a raccoon either. So the one suspect that actually makes the most sense would be a person. Be a homeless man or a transient or a neighbor or a lunatic or somebody out on the streets passing through, who knows, whatever you want to call them, but a human. Humans can often approach dogs better than animals can, although I still think a dog would bark at somebody, especially in the middle of the night going through their yard. But I think, they could maybe toss it a bone or come over when it's a little bit light out, here boy, give it a treat, give it a bone, let it chew on it, and while it's chewing on the bone, go through the trash. But I think most humans would kind of make less of a mess than he described. Also, I don't know how many homeless transients are running around Ontario, Canada, especially the northern parts. Pretty harsh climate. So yeah, I guess a human would actually probably make the most sense here. But the question is there something else? Is there something else that could be doing this? If it's not raccoons, if it's not bears, if it's not people, if none of these really fit all the criteria of something being sneaky, something that would want to go through trash, something that's a known scavenger, something that has hands, something that's smart enough to know to give something to a dog, that would have to be, like I said, in the realm of people. But I don't think a person would necessarily go through the same person's trash 3 days in a row unless it was a neighbor trying to get some paperwork or some plot we don't know about. What if there's something else out there? What if there's something else that's been seen in the woods for many, many years, all across the United States and all across Canada, that the natives have traditions of to this very day? Every day, people have sightings all across the area, and a lot of encounters. People who have encountered these creatures say that they've gone through trash cans and they've gone through dumpsters, and they have a history of this, and they have a history of messing with humans, be quite intelligent enough to think to scavenge a deer bone that maybe they've hunted themselves. And when you look at the sightings map, Canada especially has tons of sightings of a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, whatever you want to call these creatures. Now, for some of you who are new to this channel, who don't believe in Bigfoot, and you guys, it's a big eye roll, I'm not telling you that Bigfoot did this. I see no conclusive proof that Bigfoot did this, but I think, like me, people like me who have had close encounters with these creatures, who know them to be very well true, people who accept their existence, especially on the edge of a big wild place in Ontario. If you got bears, you could probably support a Bigfoot. And if there are deer around, because I'm giving him deer bones, you could support a Bigfoot. And I think sometimes we need to think of how ridiculous we're getting in our line of thought and our thinking. If I have to think that a bear is smart enough to get close to a dog without the dog barking and give it a bone while it can go dig through a trash and do this 3 days in a row and be quiet enough for the owner not to see it, I think that's a bit of a stretch. And if you think that maybe Bigfoot exists, then, well, maybe that might be another option of what's going on here. We'll let you guys decide what's going on. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and ring the bell notification. And stay safe in the woods out there, folks.